Hong Kong, private estate in Kowloon Tong. December 1971. The rain hammered against the windows with that particular intensity that only Hong Kong monsoons could deliver, turning the world outside into sheets of water that made visibility beyond 20 feet nearly impossible. Inside the estate's private training hall, the temperature was comfortable, but the atmosphere was tense, charged with the kind of energy that preceded serious violence. This wasn't a public gymnasium or a commercial dojo. This was a private facility on the grounds of a wealthy businessman's estate, a space designed for discreet meetings and activities that required absolute privacy. The training hall was approximately 40 feet square, hardwood floors polished to a mirror shine, our walls covered with traditional Chinese scrolls depicting warriors and battles from ancient dynasties, lighting provided by modern fixtures that created even illumination without shadows or dark corners. One wall was entirely mirrors, allowing fighters to observe their form and movement. The other walls were bare except for the scrolls, no equipment mounted, no distractions, just open space designed for serious training, or, as tonight's purpose demanded, for serious confrontation. Only 8 people were present in the hall that evening, and every one of them understood that what was about to happen could never be discussed publicly, could never be documented, could never become official record. This was the kind of event that existed in whispers and rumors, that became legend precisely because it couldn't be verified, and that carried weight because the few witnesses would never confirm or deny what they'd seen. Bruce Lee stood near the mirrors, wearing simple black training pants and no shirt, his famously defined physique on full display, every muscle visible, his body showing the results of obsessive training and refinement. At 31 years old, he was at the absolute peak of his physical capabilities, faster and stronger than he'd ever been, his techniques honed through thousands of hours of practice and real application. He looked calm, focused, showing no nervousness despite the situation he'd agreed to. Across the hall, maybe 30 feet away, stood the man who challenged him, the reason for this private meeting, the fighter who'd made claims that Bruce's reputation was inflated and that real combat would expose the gap between movie star and legitimate fighter. His name was Wong Shen Lung, though he went by the westernized name William Wong among Hong Kong's expatriate community. William was 29 years old, stood 5'11", weighed 178 pounds of dense, practical muscle. He had been born in Hong Kong, but had spent 5 years training in Thailand, living in Muay Thai camps, fighting professionally in Bangkok's underground circuit, where fights were brutal and sometimes ended in death or permanent injury. His record was unverified, but reportedly stood at somewhere around 40 wins, mostly knockouts, against legitimate fighters in contexts where there were no safety rules, no weight classes, no protections. And William's body told the story of his fighting career. His shins were covered in calcification from years of conditioning against heavy bags and bamboo poles, making them effectively weapons-grade bone. His elbows showed similar hardening, the joints enlarged from repeated impact. His face carried scar tissue over both eyebrows, a flattened nose that had been broken so many times it no longer had its original structure, ears showing early signs of cauliflower deformation from grappling. This was a man who'd earned his reputation through actual violence, not demonstrations or exhibitions. William had returned to Hong Kong 6 months earlier with significant financial backing from sources that preferred to remain anonymous, opening a Muay Thai gym in Mongkok that quickly developed a reputation for brutal training and effective fighters. He'd been making statements to students and other martial artists about how traditional Chinese martial arts had become too soft, too focused on forms and philosophy, while Muay Thai remained what martial arts should be: a proven combat system tested in real fights against resisting opponents. Inevitably, his criticisms had included Bruce Lee. William had told anyone who'd listen that Bruce was a movie star playing martial artist, that his famous speed was camera tricks and wire work, that his philosophy about adapting techniques was just an excuse for not mastering any legitimate fighting system. He'd claimed that in a real fight, Muay Thai's proven effectiveness would destroy Bruce's hybrid approach, that traditional striking and clinch work would overcome whatever Bruce had developed, that the challenge had been issued publicly enough that Bruce couldn't ignore it without damaging his reputation, but privately enough that it could be handled discreetly. A mutual acquaintance, a wealthy businessman named Thomas Chu, who maintained connections in both traditional Chinese martial arts and the Muay Thai community, had arranged this private meeting. He'd offered his estate's training hall as neutral ground, had agreed to witness the fight, along with a carefully selected group who could be trusted to keep the results confidential regardless of the outcome. The other 6 witnesses were positioned around the perimeter of the hall, sitting or standing, all of them serious martial artists or businessmen with deep connections to Hong Kong's fighting community. They included James Lee, Bruce's close friend and training partner, who'd traveled from Oakland specifically for this event; Dan Inosanto, another of Bruce's senior students, standing near the entrance with his arms crossed and his face showing concern; Taki Kimura, Bruce's first student, who'd flown in from Seattle; and 3 Hong Kong martial arts masters, 2 from traditional kung fu lineages and 1 from a boxing background, all of them respected enough that their assessment would carry weight in the community. Thomas Chu stood at the center of one wall, positioned to see everything clearly. He'd laid out the conditions beforehand, explaining them to both fighters and getting their agreement. This would be a real fight. No rules, except no eye gouging and no biting. Strikes, kicks, elbows, knees, grappling, throws, all permitted. The fight would continue until one man submitted verbally, was rendered unconscious, or was injured badly enough that continuing would risk permanent damage. There would be no rounds, no time limits, no referee to restart them if they clinched or went to the ground. This was as close to a real street fight as could be arranged in a controlled environment. Both fighters had signed documents acknowledging the risks, agreeing not to pursue legal action regardless of injury sustained, understanding that what happened in this hall stayed in this hall. The documents would be destroyed immediately after the fight, the very existence of this meeting deniable if anyone ever asked. William Wong had insisted on one additional condition that Bruce had accepted. If William won, Bruce would publicly acknowledge that his techniques had limitations against proven fighting systems, that Muay Thai's traditional methods were superior to his hybrid approach. If Bruce won, William would close his gym in Hong Kong and return to Thailand, removing his voice from the Hong Kong martial arts scene. The stakes were high enough that both men were completely serious, completely committed. This wasn't a friendly sparring session or a philosophical debate. This was 2 fighters with opposing worldviews settling the question through violence, the oldest and most definitive form of resolution. Bruce had spent the previous 2 days in careful preparation, not just physical training, but mental preparation, studying what he knew about Muay Thai techniques, reviewing footage of Thai fighters, discussing strategy with his students. He understood this would be different from the demonstrations and challenge matches that had built his reputation. William was a professional fighter with extensive experience, someone who'd survived situations designed to test fighters to their absolute limits. Dan Inosanto had tried to talk Bruce out of accepting the challenge, arguing that the risk outweighed any potential benefit, that Bruce had nothing to prove to anyone who understood real martial arts. But Bruce had been adamant. His entire philosophy was built on the idea that martial arts should be tested against real resistance, that techniques needed to work under pressure against skilled opponents. If he refused this challenge, it would undermine everything he taught about practicality over tradition. William had also prepared seriously, spending the past week in intensive training, drilling combinations, working his conditioning, sparring with the best fighters at his gym. He'd told his students this would settle the question of whether movie-style martial arts could stand against proven combat systems, that Bruce's reputation was about to be exposed as built on Hollywood smoke and mirrors rather than actual fighting ability. Thomas Chu checked his watch, confirming both fighters were ready, then stepped to the center of the hall. "Gentlemen, you both understand the conditions. This fight continues until submission, unconsciousness, or injury too severe to continue. I'll be watching for that last condition, but neither of you should expect me to stop this quickly. You've both insisted on determining this definitively, so that's what we're going to allow." He paused, looking at each fighter in turn. "This is your last opportunity to reconsider, to settle this through other means." Both men remained silent, their eyes locked on each other, neither showing any intention of backing down. Thomas nodded slowly, accepting their commitment. "Then let's begin. When you're ready." He stepped back to his position against the wall, and the training hall went absolutely silent, except for the rain hammering against the windows and the faint sound of both fighters breathing. The 8 witnesses understood they were about to see something historic, a real fight between 2 legitimate martial artists. No cooperation, no choreography, no safety measures beyond the minimal conditions they'd agreed to. If you're watching this story and learning about one of the most dangerous moments in Bruce Lee's life, and something that was kept secret for decades, hit that subscribe button right now, because this is the kind of true account that reveals who Bruce Lee really was beyond the legend and the movies. William began circling slowly, moving with the distinctive rhythm of Muay Thai fighters, his weight on the balls of his feet, his hands held high in a modified boxing guard, his lead leg slightly bent and ready to check kicks or throw them. His movement was relaxed but ready, showing the confidence of someone who'd been in dozens of real fights, who knew exactly what his body could do under pressure. Bruce remained relatively still, his stance more neutral, hands lower than William's, his weight distribution more even. To observers familiar with fighting, Bruce looked almost casual, but those who knew him recognized this as his intercepting stance, the position from which he could explode in any direction with maximum speed and minimum telegraphing. William threw the first strike, a fast, low kick aimed at Bruce's lead leg, the kind of limb-destroying technique Muay Thai was famous for. Thrown with his calcified shin, designed to damage the thigh muscle and impair mobility. Bruce lifted his leg in a perfectly timed check, his shin meeting William's shin in a collision that made a sharp cracking sound. Both fighters' faces showed that the impact hurt, that neither shin had given way easily, that they were evenly matched in conditioning. William reset and immediately threw a second low kick to the same target, testing whether Bruce could check repeatedly, whether his leg conditioning could withstand sustained Muay Thai shin attacks. Bruce checked again. Same sharp collision and same mutual pain, but his leg held firm, his structure absorbing the impact without compromising his stance. William switched tactics, throwing a fast jab to set up a powerful right cross, traditional boxing combinations that Muay Thai had integrated into its system. Bruce slipped the jab with minimal head movement, but the cross was faster than expected, thrown with legitimate power, and it glanced off Bruce's shoulder as he angled away, not landing clean, but close enough to show William's speed and power were real. Bruce countered immediately with a straight punch toward William's face, his trademark vertical fist traveling in a straight line. William's hands came up to block, catching Bruce's fist on his forearms, but the impact pushed him back a step, showing that Bruce's striking power was significant despite the size difference. They separated and reset, both fighters assessing, adjusting, understanding that the other was legitimately skilled, legitimately dangerous. This wasn't going to be a quick demonstration or an easy victory for either of them. William pressed forward more aggressively now, throwing a combination of punches and elbows, trying to close distance and enter the clinch range where Muay Thai excelled, where he could use knee strikes and throws and his size advantage. Bruce moved laterally, circling away from the combination, his footwork keeping him just outside William's optimal range, making William chase him, controlling distance and angles. William threw a middle kick, a hard roundhouse aimed at Bruce's ribs, thrown with full commitment and the kind of power that could break bones if it landed clean. But Bruce moved into the kick instead of away from it, a counterintuitive response that jammed William's technique before it could generate full force, and simultaneously, Bruce's elbow came down on William's extending thigh, a sharp strike that hit muscle rather than bone, but still caused a grimace of pain to flash across William's face. They were 3 minutes into the fight now, both fighters breathing harder, both showing the effects of strikes that had landed or been blocked, neither showing any damage serious enough to slow them down. The intensity was increasing. Both men understanding this would be decided by whoever could impose their strategy most effectively. And if you're fascinated by this real account of Bruce Lee in his most dangerous fight, hit that like button because it helps more people discover these true stories that have been kept secret for decades. William changed tactics again, feinting a punch, but then shooting forward for a clinch, getting his hands behind Bruce's neck in the Muay Thai plum position before Bruce could fully react, pulling Bruce's head down while simultaneously driving his knee up toward Bruce's face. This was William's preferred range, where his Muay Thai training gave him maximum advantage, where he could control Bruce's upper body while destroying him with knee strikes. But Bruce had trained specifically for this situation, knowing that Muay Thai fighters would try to clinch. Instead of fighting the clinch by trying to push away, which would only tire him out against William's superior clinch strength, Bruce dropped his weight suddenly, breaking William's posture, then exploded upward and backward, creating space while simultaneously striking William's arms to break the grip. William's knee strike missed by inches, finding empty air where Bruce's face had been a moment before, and Bruce had escaped the clinch before William could re-establish control. William's respect for Bruce's skill visibly increased, his expression showing that he'd expected the clinch to be more effective, that Bruce had defended better than anticipated. He pressed forward again, knowing that his best chance was to wear Bruce down through volume and power, to make Bruce's superior speed matter less by forcing sustained exchanges where toughness and conditioning would decide the outcome. They traded strikes for another 2 minutes, Bruce landing faster but lighter shots, William landing fewer but heavier strikes, both men showing the effects now. Bruce with a reddening spot on his ribs where a kick had partially landed, William with a cut over his left eyebrow from an elbow that had gotten through his guard. The blood running down William's face seemed to energize him rather than slow him down, his aggression increasing, his combinations getting more desperate and committed. He threw a spinning back elbow, a flashy technique, but dangerous when thrown with commitment, the kind of strike that could end a fight if it landed on the jaw or temple. Bruce ducked under it with maybe 2 inches of clearance, feeling the wind from the strike passing over his head, and countered with a low kick to William's supporting leg, while he was still completing his spin, using William's committed movement against him. William's leg buckled slightly from the kick, his balance compromised, and Bruce pressed the advantage immediately, closing distance and throwing a rapid combination of punches to William's head and body, his speed suddenly overwhelming, his strikes landing faster than William could defend, 3, 4, 5 clean shots landing in perhaps 2 seconds. William covered up, his arms protecting his head, absorbing the strikes on his forearms and shoulders, his Muay Thai conditioning allowing him to weather the storm without going down. But he was clearly hurt, clearly stunned by the sudden explosion of speed and precision. Bruce backed off rather than pressing for a finish, showing control and awareness that continuing the assault might cause injuries beyond what they'd agreed to. William lowered his arm slowly, testing his balance, checking his face for damage, finding blood from his eyebrow cut, but no other serious injuries. The 8 witnesses were absolutely silent, watching 2 masters test each other at the highest level, seeing techniques and counter-techniques they'd studied for years being applied under real pressure with real consequences. James Lee, watching from his position along the wall, would later describe this as the most intense fighting he'd ever witnessed, not because it was the most violent, but because it was 2 legitimate martial artists operating at their absolute peak, both completely committed, neither giving an inch psychologically despite the physical damage accumulating. They were 6 minutes into the fight now, both men showing fatigue, both breathing hard, both carrying damage. William's face was marked from Bruce's combination, so the eyebrow cut bleeding steadily, his left leg showing reduced mobility from the low kicks Bruce had landed. Bruce had taken several hard body shots, his ribs showing reddening that would turn to bruises, his left shoulder sore from blocking William's power strikes. William made a decision, committing fully to a strategy that would either win the fight or leave him completely vulnerable. He pressed forward aggressively, throwing wild haymaker punches with both hands, abandoning defense entirely, trying to land one massive shot that would end the fight through pure power, accepting that he might get hit in the process, but betting that his conditioning would allow him to survive Bruce's counters while his power would end Bruce if anything landed clean. It was a desperate strategy, the approach of a fighter who recognized he was losing on points and needed a knockout to win. Bruce read the commitment, saw the abandonment of defense, and made his own decision about how to end this. Instead of moving away from the wild punches, which would have been the safe option, Bruce moved forward into William's range, slipping inside the looping right hand, and drove his knee up into William's midsection with focused power, not to the groin, which would have violated their agreed rules, but to the solar plexus, that vulnerable point just below the sternum, where the celiac plexus nerves clustered. The impact was precise and devastating. William's forward aggression stopped instantly, his body folding around the knee strike, all the air exploding from his lungs in a sudden gasp, his legs losing their strength. He stumbled backward 3 steps, both hands clutching his midsection, his face showing shock and pain, trying desperately to draw breath, but finding his diaphragm completely unresponsive. Bruce followed, but didn't press the attack, watching William carefully, ready to strike again if necessary, but also showing the control to recognize when an opponent was finished, when continuing the assault would cross from winning a fight to causing unnecessary injury. William went down to one knee, still trying to breathe, still clutching his solar plexus, his tough fighter's instincts screaming at him to get up and continue, but his body simply not responding to the commands. After about 15 seconds, that probably felt like an eternity to him, his diaphragm began functioning again, allowing shallow, gasping breaths, and his coordination slowly returning. Thomas Chu had moved forward, ready to call the fight, but William raised one hand in a stopping gesture, indicating he wasn't finished, wasn't ready to submit. He pushed himself back to his feet slowly, testing his breathing, finding it painful but functional, his warrior's pride refusing to accept defeat while he could still stand. Bruce waited patiently, showing respect for William's toughness, not pressing while his opponent recovered, giving him the opportunity to continue if he chose. The other witnesses exchanged glances, impressed by both fighters, by William's incredible toughness in continuing after a strike that would have ended most fighters, and by Bruce's control in not pressing for a finish that might have caused serious injury. If you've made it this far in the story, I'll leave a comment below telling me what you think about this fight, about the level both fighters showed, about Bruce's control. I read every comment and want to know what resonates with you. William reset his stance, his breathing still labored, his body clearly hurting from the accumulated damage, but his eyes showing he wasn't finished, wasn't ready to concede. He moved forward again, slower now, more careful, understanding that another clean strike, like the knee to his solar plexus, might end the fight definitively. They traded cautious strikes for another minute, both men more defensive now, both showing the effects of 7 minutes of serious fighting, both aware that the next significant exchange might determine the outcome. William threw another low kick, his bread and butter technique, but this time his damaged leg made the kick slower, less powerful, and Bruce not only checked it, but caught William's leg, holding it for a split second before sweeping William's supporting leg with a quick arcing kick. William went down hard on his back, the impact driving more air from his already struggling lungs, his damaged ribs protesting the collision with the hardwood floor. Bruce could have followed him down, could have transitioned to ground fighting and finished the fight with strikes or a submission, but instead he backed away, allowing William to stand if he could, showing again that he was more interested in proving his point than in causing unnecessary damage. William rolled to his side and pushed himself up slowly, visibly exhausted now, his toughness keeping him in the fight, but his body clearly breaking down under the accumulated damage. He stood and immediately had to steady himself against the wall, his balance compromised, his breathing still labored from the solar plexus strike and the impact with the floor. Thomas Chu stepped forward, his voice carrying authority. "William, I think that's enough. You've proven your toughness, but continuing risks serious injury." William shook his head stubbornly. "I can still fight. I haven't submitted." But his body betrayed his words, swaying slightly, his left hand still pressed against his damaged ribs, his left leg barely supporting weight. Bruce spoke for the first time since the fight began. "William, you're a real fighter. You've proven that beyond question. But Thomas is right. Continuing from here only risks both of us getting injuries that will affect the rest of our lives. You've tested my techniques against legitimate Muay Thai, and I've tested my approach against a proven fighter. Both of us have learned something. Let's end this with mutual respect." William looked at Bruce, saw no mockery or superiority in his expression, only genuine respect for a fellow martial artist who'd fought with honor and skill. He straightened up as much as his damaged ribs allowed, gave a small bow, and spoke through labored breathing. "You're the real thing, Lee. Everything they say about your speed and precision, it's all true. I thought movie stars couldn't be real fighters, but you just proved me completely wrong." The training hall erupted in quiet conversation, the 8 witnesses discussing what they had witnessed, comparing observations, processing the fact that they'd just seen one of the highest level martial arts matches any of them would ever witness. James Lee approached Bruce, examining the damage, finding bruising developing on Bruce's ribs and shoulder, but no serious injuries. Dan Inosanto brought water and a towel, looking relieved that his teacher had survived without significant harm. The 3 Hong Kong martial arts masters approached William, helping him to a chair, examining his injuries, finding the cut eyebrow, damaged ribs, and a badly bruised leg, but nothing that required immediate medical attention. Thomas Chu addressed both fighters and all witnesses. "What happened here tonight remains confidential. No public discussion, no confirmation, or denial if anyone asks, no documentation. We all agreed to this beforehand, and I'm holding everyone to that agreement." The witnesses nodded, understanding that discretion was part of the price of admission to witnessing something this significant. "Before we finish, I need to ask one favor. If this story revealed something about Bruce Lee you never knew, if you learned about his real fighting ability tested against a legitimate opponent, please share this video. Send it to someone who thinks Bruce was just a movie star, who doubts his real combat skills. Sharing helps preserve these true stories. Over the following days, both fighters recovered from their injuries. Bruce's ribs healed completely within 2 weeks, the bruising fading, his training returning to normal intensity. William's injuries took longer, the damaged ribs requiring a month before he could train seriously again. But he made a full recovery with no permanent damage. True to his word, William closed his Muay Thai gym in Hong Kong 3 months later and returned to Thailand. But before leaving, he visited Bruce privately, thanking him for the fight, for the lesson in humility, for showing him that martial arts effectiveness came in forms he hadn't fully appreciated. They parted with mutual respect, two warriors who tested each other at the highest level, and both emerged better for it. The 8 witnesses kept their word, never publicly confirming what happened that December night in 1971. But in private conversations, in small gatherings of trusted martial artists, the story was told carefully, passed along to those who could appreciate its significance, and becoming one of those legendary accounts that couldn't be verified but carried the weight of truth because of who the sources were. James Lee would occasionally mention to his closest students that he had once seen Bruce in his most dangerous fight against a legitimate Muay Thai champion, and that Bruce had proven every claim he'd ever made about his techniques working under real pressure against skilled resistance. But he'd never provide details, never confirm specifics, honoring his commitment to confidentiality. Dan Inosanto, in his later years, would write obliquely about witnessing Bruce tested by a fighter with extensive ring experience, someone who came to prove that traditional fighting systems were superior to Bruce's hybrid approach, only to discover that Bruce's techniques worked exactly as advertised. But again, no names and no dates, no specifics that would violate the agreement. The 3 Hong Kong martial arts masters who witnessed the fight carried the knowledge silently, using it to inform their own understanding of combat effectiveness, but never publicly discussing what they'd seen. Hit that subscribe button one final time if you haven't already, because Bruce Lee's story contains secrets like this, dangerous moments that were kept private, fights that tested him at the highest level, true accounts that reveal capabilities beyond what most people know. The legacy of that private fight extends beyond the 8 witnesses, beyond Hong Kong's martial arts community, beyond even the question of whether Bruce Lee could handle himself against legitimate fighters. It represented the ultimate test of his philosophy, his techniques, his years of training and refinement against someone specifically trained to destroy him, someone with extensive fighting experience and genuine skills. William Wong weighed 178 pounds of proven fighting muscle, had survived dozens of brutal matches in Thailand's underground circuit, carried the physical evidence of real combat in his scarred and hardened body. Bruce Lee weighed 135 pounds, had never fought professionally in Thailand, had built his reputation through demonstrations and challenge matches rather than organized fighting. By every conventional measure in Muay Thai, William should have dominated, his size and proven combat experience overwhelming Bruce's speed and technique. But in approximately 8 minutes of real fighting, Bruce proved that his hybrid approach worked against traditional systems, and that his speed and precision could overcome size and proven toughness. That understanding, fighting at a deep theoretical level, translated to practical effectiveness, even against someone with extensive ring experience. William came to Hong Kong claiming Bruce was a movie star playing at martial arts, that real combat would expose the gap between Hollywood and legitimate fighting. He left Hong Kong having learned that some movie stars were also real martial artists, that Bruce's techniques worked exactly as claimed, that fighting had dimensions Muay Thai's proven methods didn't fully address. Only 8 people witnessed it. Those 8 kept the secret for decades, and the story became legend precisely because it couldn't be verified, couldn't be documented, and couldn't be proven, but carried the weight of truth because of who the witnesses were and because they never sought publicity for their knowledge. Bruce Lee's most dangerous fight, the one that truly tested whether his revolutionary approach could handle someone trained specifically to destroy him, happened in private, stayed private, and proved definitively that everything Bruce claimed about his fighting ability was absolutely real.